Please join me in welcoming USDA Secretary Sonny Purdue.
Brian, good to see you again. I know that was a slip of the tongue, Brian. It's good to see you again, but I did try to annex your beautiful county into Georgia from time to time in Leon County. We call it just Southwest Georgia. But it's good to be with you here today, and I appreciate the opportunity to just stand before you for a little while and just to share my heart and to hear your heart about that, about issues that we share in common. I want to be a partner with you. You all have an important role in government. We learned in civics in third grade the different levels of government. You've got local government, you've got state government, you've got federal government. I've sort of been in all of them. And the fact is, I can tell you, having been in all of them, I don't consider any one superior to the other. We just have different roles, different responsibilities, and sometimes different resources. So what I want to tell you today is that how can we work together best? Because, as you know, ultimately, we all serve the same citizens. You all are there on the ground. You see your citizens day in and day out. You see them at the grocery store. You see them at the church. You see them going to the school council meetings. You see them, and they know you. You're part of the community, and they always have the freedom to tell you what's on their mind. Sometimes that's a blessing and a curse. The good part is they can tell you what's on their mind. The bad part is they can tell you what's on their mind, and you all have experienced that. I used to tell all of our local officials when I was governor, they know where you live, and they can come get you, and you don't live up behind a fence with state troopers guarding that. So I understand the challenges that we have in serving those same people. But it is in all of our interest in the United States of America, it's in all of our best interest to serve those to the best of our ability. And I believe we do that best by a partnership. And that's what we at the USDA want to develop with you county leaders, is a partnership of how we can serve all of those citizens in your area, corporately the United States of America, better. There are a lot of needs out there. You know those needs very, very well. So today I want to talk to you about, I'm going to use kind of a little wordplay. We want to learn how to communicate. We want to learn how to collaborate, eliminate, innovate, create, and then we're going to celebrate. Maybe the end of my speech, celebrate. But nonetheless, let's talk about communications for a minute. I am a product, as Brian said, of rural area. We call it in Georgia, Houston County. It's spelled like a little community in Texas called Houston, Texas. But anyway, I grew up there, and it was an agrarian county when I was born, but we saw the transition there. My first role in public service, aside from business, was being asked to join and serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission in a transitioning county. As commissioners and judges, you know what that's like, because you all have to make those decisions in changing. And I was told when I was elected, or when I was asked to be appointed, they said, "You don't have any political ambitions, do you?" I said, "No." They said, "Good, with this job you won't need any." And you know what I mean. So those are tough decisions, but what that taught me, that was probably the best training ground I've had for any kind of public service. While you can have black and white operating rules, you can have ordinances, you can have land use plans, people still want to talk to people about that. And you cannot write enough laws and ordinances to make every situation fit. That's why you have these boards and commissions that advise you about what the recommendations you all should take. As the elected officials, you all, as appropriate, get to make that final decision. But nonetheless, what I learned was how passionate people were about those constitutional rights of land ownership, private property rights. I think it's one of the premier constitutional rights that we in America have had that have set us apart for many, many years and continue to set us apart. I also learned about the passion people have for their communities and how the good of the community was important to people that came together to live, and we had to balance that. So that's what I tried to learn in that job, of how to balance priorities, how to balance rights, how to balance emotions there. You might imagine we had a lot of civic engagement. Those people were very civically involved about their homes and their neighborhoods and the areas of change. And most of us don't like change there, and you would see something going on or a sign come up across the street or in your neighborhood. You were very interested in how that was going to change. So I want to start with communication. That's very important, because if we're going to be partners, whether it's marriage partners, family partners, anything, if we're going to be government partners, we've got to learn to communicate. And that's the first part I want to talk to you about today. And I want to tell you, I know Ann Hazlett has met with some of your rural caucus people here today, had a great dynamic discussion, but we didn't get off to too good of a start on communication. Shortly after I was confirmed, I developed and publicized a reorganization plan for the USDA, because I wanted to do exactly what we're talking about here today, and I wanted to do it very, very well. We wanted to streamline it. You may know that I was nominated pretty late in the cycle, in January the 19th, the day before the inauguration, and it took me 96 days to get confirmed. So far, I'm the only Senate-confirmed person at the USDA. Now, we've got 7 undersecretary positions. We've got about 19 Senate-confirmed. I'm the only one. And when it came to rural development, I did not want to wait, nor did I want to delay getting the job done, because it's so important to work with you all out there where people live. So I determined, along with some other reorganizations, that we would make the Rural Development Director, the Rural Development Undersecretary, report directly to the Secretary of Agriculture. Heretofore, they'd been an undersecretary, had a nice title, and they reported up to the Deputy Secretary, and the Deputy Secretary would look at what they said, and sooner or later it would pop up to the Secretary of Agriculture, and they'd make a decision. I work for a man that's a sooner than later guy. And if you ask people in Georgia, they'll tell you I'm a sooner than later guy too. I don't like the bureaucratic process very much. And when it came to making decisions on rural development, I thought it was best to have someone that had direct access to me. I call it walk-in privileges, where they could come into my office and say, Secretary, here's a couple of proposals we think we need to move on very quickly. Let me tell you about them, and these are the options, and we'd like to get a decision and go. That's the way I like to operate when it comes to rural development. These others are more process-oriented, they're more management-oriented, but you people want decisions, and we want to get decisions out to you quickly. So that's why I made Ann Hazlett the assistant to the Secretary of Agriculture. Your organization wrote a letter to the chairman of the House and the chairman of the Senate and the ranking members of both committees, complaining about that decision. Didn't talk to me, didn't say anything to me about that, didn't ask me why, what my plans were, what my vision was, but wrote directly to Congress. Now, I don't know about you, I kind of consider that tattletaling. You know, they knew what I'd informed the same people what they were going to do, what I was going to do. I called every one of them and told them what we were planning to do. But, and they knew it by the time they got your letter. But the fact is, if we're going to learn to be partners, we've got to learn to communicate directly. Because I work for the president. I'm in the executive branch. I'm not in the congressional or legislative branch. I'm not in the judicial branch. Think about the fact, if we had a deal one-on-one together, if we were working together and I didn't like something you all were doing, how would you feel if I wrote your county judge a letter before I even said anything to you about it and said, this commission is doing bad stuff. You need to make them fix it. That was essentially what the letter had to say. Now, with that in mind, you all need to know I'm a forgive and forget kind of guy. And I want to tell you, I hope that's all behind us, right? I want to be accessible. And I want you to feel like you can call me or my assistant to the secretary, Ann Hazlett, anytime you want about issues and needs that you have, so we can begin a true partnership that begins with communication of getting things done. That's the way I operate. You're going to have a big target of where I am, and we're going to talk about a little about those things today, and we're going to determine how we do that. I see my friend Ross King down here on the front row from Georgia. You can ask Ross what my record was as governor of Georgia there and working with local communities and counties. That's where my heart is. That's where the job gets done. That's where the rubber meets the road. We can make all these kind of things, and I'm telling you, I'm also a recipient of this attitude of we make the rules and you got to follow them. It's kind of like the political aspect of kick the dog, you know. The federal government makes rules, the state government makes rules, and guess who gets to fill all those things? And it's you at the end of the chain many times, and the citizens are looking to you. So if we can communicate going forward directly and forthrightly, you're going to find me a forthright kind of guy. I will tell you where I am, what I can do, what I can't do, and you've got every opportunity in the world to try to change my mind, and I think that's the way we can communicate well. Y'all good with that? Can we go on? Okay. All right. Let's talk about other things because it's important what we do. Collaboration. We want to work together. We got to communicate in order to collaborate, and that's why you have needs out there. There are a lot of needs out there that USDA can be a partner in, and we want to be that partner. We've got a distribution network and almost a $250 billion portfolio that's doing relatively well out there. But we want to be partners. Partners means everybody contributes something, right? If you're a partner and you're not contributing anything, most of the time you don't stay a partner very long. So my definition of partnership and collaboration is everyone brings something to the table. You all, Ross will tell you, I'm a skin in the game kind of guy. We did that all over Georgia, and we got much more leverage. Our president is a guy that wants leverage out. He wants our federal government to help you in a way while you help yourself serve the citizens of your area while we serve the citizens of the whole United States of America. So as we collaborate, let's figure out how we can work together with ideas that we'll talk about in a second that make sense in various areas of the various needs that we have. Secondly, we not only want to communicate, collaborate, we want to eliminate. You've heard the expression, I'm sure, I'm here from the federal government, I'm here to help you, right? We all know that. I used to tell my federal partners when I was governor, look, on the spot, sight unseen, I'll take 20% less money if you just get out of the way. We know what kind of regulations are hindering in that way. And almost on day one, President Trump has charged all of us with determining regulations that are impediments to doing good business, to making good sense, to getting good value for our citizens. And I bet y'all know of some of them, don't you? So we want to hear from you. We want to hear the fly in the ointment that keeps you from doing things more efficiently, more effectively, and better, more timely, and getting a better deal and a better value at the end of the day without some of these regulations that just keep us just a check off. And you know it, and I know it. We've all experienced it. And my goal from the USDA is to eliminate. The president charged us to identify those. I have one person that's just doing that full time. Already we're up to about 250 in about 90 days. And I know there are a lot more to go. The interesting thing in the federal government, you all at the local level are much more nimble. You can change these things in one meeting or maybe two meetings and get something done and move forward. On the federal level, getting rid of a regulation is almost as difficult as putting one in. And then my people told me, I said, well, that doesn't make sense. Why don't we get rid of that? Okay, we will. I said, when can we do that? Well, it'll probably take us about 18 months. I said, what? About 18 months to get rid of a regulation. That's not going to work. We're going to work hard to eliminate the kind of barriers that keep you and us from working together well so that we can continue to do the kind of job for all of our citizens that we need to do. In the introduction, you heard that I was governor for 8 years, having been in the state senate for a while, been in planning and zoning for 10 years in Houston County, seeing the passions that we talked about. So I've seen the emotions that come and go. And as governor, I know the kind of budget constraints that you're under. When I tell you I've been there, I've been there. I was governor from 2003 to 2011. You remember those glorious economic times? 2003 to 2011. Out of 8 budgets that I presented to the General Assembly, 5 of them had less money than the year before. Not slowing growth, less money than the year before. I like to tell people, I told the Senate in confirmation, I grew a $20 billion budget to $16 billion in Georgia. And you do that by managing well and more effectively. You all have to do that every day as you have more demands, more needs, and all the kind of things that the citizens want with trying to do it on shoestring budgets that way. So we want to help in that regard as well with a skin in the game partnership here by making sure that we can do it with good value for all of us. So we're going to communicate. We want to collaborate for the best ideas. We want to eliminate those regulations that just don't make any sense. We're not talking about things that are protecting for the environment or the economy or health and safety or all those kind of things. We're talking about some of the silly ones, and I bet you could tell me more about what that is than I can tell you. But we want to do those things. Now, let's talk about building back up. We want to innovate and create. Some of the best ideas I've ever seen come from the people on the ground, and that is the governments on the ground. We want to hear the ideas. We've got certain sectors that you all are familiar with in USDA as far as the Rural Development Program, but we want to hear other ideas. One idea that I've heard, and we've already talked to Congress about, we got probably, I don't know how many different definitions of rural out there. You know, what we're talking with Congress about is making an exclusion of rural, that everything under a certain level is considered rural, and have one so you know whether you fit in or whether you don't, what applies. We think that makes sense. You got a set for this one, you got a set for this rule, you got this to qualify. We want to make it easier for you to understand the rules and to do that, and so we can innovate and create. And what I hope to generate today is some more ideas from you talking to me or Ann about how we could do even better. Rural development's had a great history. I know that was some of the concerns that your association wrote about, because it had been one of those programs you felt like was working. And we want to make it work even better. We can do that when I put our heads together of innovation and creativity about getting things done in a better way, a better value, better for your citizens. If we serve your citizens in your counties, corporately, we're going to serve the citizens of America. And frankly, we know that while the USDA doesn't really interface necessarily with all of your counties, Bryan's County and Leon County in Florida, about 290,000 people or more, they still got some pretty good rural parts. I know. I've hunted on them. And I've always, that beautiful part of Northwest Florida, you all are probably some of the same way. Mary and I lived here in Franklin County when we were in the Air Force. I enjoyed the outdoor aspects here of southern Franklin County when we lived here back in the early 70s. So all of us have places, whether it's urban agriculture or agriculture outside of our city limits or our dense areas, that matter when it comes to innovating and creating. What are those kind of needs that you have? You know them better than I do. You know that we all, how do you define quality of life? On the first day that President Trump swore me in, or that I was sworn in, we went over there and he sat down with us on, I think, the first farmers roundtable that ever happened from the president. And he listened to those 15 or 20 people talk about the needs they had in agriculture. And then he held up and signed a proclamation, an executive order. And I've learned since that the president, when he signs an executive order, he's not signing an executive suggestion. And he means what he wants and says what he wants about those kind of things. It was about rural prosperity, creating an interagency task force of rural prosperity there. And I've got a broad definition of rural because I've been to some of your counties and I've seen you've got cities there, but you've got wide swaths of beautiful rural agricultural land there that we want to be involved in and help in any way that we can. 22 different agencies involved. He gave USDA the lead there in putting together, chairing that interagency rural task force. We've had our first meeting, gave us 180 days to bring back concrete suggestions about action plans, not a study to put on a binder and put in a library somewhere, but an action plan of what to do in that regard. Ross King will tell you, when I became governor of Georgia, we created what was called a Commission for New Georgia. That was business people all over and citizens all over the state, about 400 really by the time we got through with all the task force. We were looking for things how we could do better, cheaper, more value, and eliminate the kind of things we're talking about here today. My commitment to them was to implement those things, and we did, many of them. We published a book that's called Government with a Business Brain, of how to get things done in a way that makes sense and people understand and recognize value. Ross can tell you that one of the things we were having, people were waiting in a driver's license line just to renew their driver's license, sometimes for 4 hours or more, standing in line there. We brought, really, I'm a University of Georgia graduate, it pains me to say this, but we were Georgia Tech engineers in and helped us design a process with a goal of getting that down to 15 minutes. You are not going to go into Walmart or any other retail store and wait 4 hours for your purchase. But we had a captive audience. They couldn't get a driver's license any further. But I wanted us to act like we were serving them at Walmart or other type of retail store where they came in, they got a number, and they were called on, they got served. And Ross can tell you that the final, not too long after that, with the same people, the same locations, we were serving people in less than 15 minutes. It can be done. We've got to figure out how to do it. We've got to innovate and create and to make that happen as we go forward. So what are those quality of life issues? Certainly housing. USDA has a huge opportunity to partner with you in housing. Some of you have already done that. Water, and certainly in water resources. Water is it's life. And we have to make sure that our communities have access to good water treatments, and those kind of things can be done. Healthcare, we know that we've got a serious crisis in opioid addiction across the country. Frankly, much of it in rural areas today. With the despair out there, we've got a huge area. Access to health care, those kind of facilities or treatment facilities. USDA has been involved in those. And now I call it really the 21st century roads and sewers and whatever is broadband. Folks, we're not going to keep kids out here in these rural areas if they don't have connectivity. They're not going to go visit Cousin Susie in the city and get up to 50 megahertz kind of megabit type of transmission, playing those games and come home and be satisfied at home. Nor can our farmers do the kind of precision agriculture that they want to do if we don't have the connectivity out there that make them use data with less resources, less cost, and better productivity there as they learn how to really inculcate and incorporate and assimilate precision agriculture into their production. It's going to make our environment better, our water cleaner, our air cleaner, and it's going to make all of us more productive as far as we go along. So those are the kind of issues we want to work with you on, are those sort of frameworks. This Rural Development Task Force has some categories that Ann is helping with. She's leading that, and I want to kind of tell you what they are here as we look at it. We're looking at quality of life issues, just like I've described. We're looking at those housing, water, food, health care, connectivity, the opioid issue. And then we're looking at broadband, that sort of thing, broadband, leadership development, all those kind of things, economic development, the kind of areas that we're doing in our rural task force have to do with quality of life issues that we've described, economic development, which is it's critical for your areas and your counties. You want economic development for economic opportunity where your communities can grow and prosper. Then certainly you mentioned innovation. We're talking about innovation as well. How can we use the new ideas of the 21st century to make things better? And then reliable workforce. The White House and the President has given us the opportunity to lead in a legal ag guest worker program. We're moving that way. Brian joined me, your president joined me at the rural or the infrastructure tabletop exercise at the White House as well. The president's asked us to take a lead on the rural infrastructure. So those are the kind of things where we can partner together by communicating and collaborating, eliminating those regulations, and certainly innovating with your ideas as well as ours, and then create a building with infrastructure where we need to go. And then at the end of that, when we look at these issues that you mentioned with her this morning, like broadband, leadership development, working on poverty, which is a perennial issue, frankly, more so in rural areas even than it is in the inner city a lot of times. We've seen the statistics there, and it's not good. If you go just to the state to the west of us in D.C., in West Virginia, and ride through some of those Appalachian towns, you'll see there's abject poverty that we have a moral responsibility to work on, and the USDA has a lot of tools to help in that area, and we want to help in partnership with you because you identify where those needs are. You can sift them out. You can help us to tell us where the most needs are. I'm a value kind of guy. We're not going to throw money at it. We're not going to just throw it out here and hope it lands somewhere where it helps. We're going to analyze those ideas based on your priorities about what needs to happen in your communities, and that's where we want to work together from the USDA. So broadband, leadership development, poverty, housing, mental health facilities, and workforce development. Those are all kind of things that we can work together. Then finally, after we communicate and we collaborate and we eliminate and we innovate and create and build, then we're going to celebrate, because momentum is really important within a community. You know some areas, you know communities, it may be yours, hopefully it is, where there's a momentum, there's an enthusiasm, there's a passion about that. We want that passion to go viral across the United States of America to make sure that we have a succeeding generation that has a best opportunity in the world to thrive in your areas and your communities, be they rural or not. The USDA wants to be a partner in that. So that's my message here today. I'm a direct communicator. I think I told you that early on. I'm just not a direct talker. Direct communication has to do with listening as well. And I want to tell you that we're prepared at USDA to listen to your needs, to work with you on how we can better all of your communities and thus better the United States to make it that dream that we've had in our generation, and we aspire deeply for our children and grandchildren. Mary and I have 14 grandchildren from 3 to 18. And my aspiration and my goal for them is that they would have the opportunities that I had as a child growing up in the 50s, 60s, 70s of what this wonderful country has afforded me. It starts in your communities. It starts in your counties. Every city in America is in a county. Every county is in a state, and obviously every state's in the United States of America. How do we take our levels of government from local to state to federal and work seamlessly for the benefit of those citizens that you represent most closely? And I've got a heart for local government because, as I said, you know the people. You have to look them in the eye. You can't go to church and look away and look down or avoid them on the street. They see you, they know you, and you've got a responsibility to them. I'm here to tell you today, as you have a responsibility to them, USDA, Sonny Purdue, has a responsibility to you, and we want you to know we're going to do our very best to fulfill that responsibility. Thank you all.